The challenge. The massive warship of the galactic Concordat emerged from hyperspace above Earth with an almost casual grace, its obsidian hull reflecting starlight like oil on water. Unlike the panicked reactions depicted in old science fiction films, humanity's response was measured, the result of years of preparation for this exact moment. On the bridge of the UES Defender, Commander Elara Reeves watched the alien vessel with calculating eyes. "They're hailing us, Commander," Lieutenant Park said from the communication station. Reeves nodded, straightening her navy blue uniform. At 38, she wore the marks of her military career in the faint scar across her right cheek and the permanent tension in her shoulders. "Put them through." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a being that appeared almost crystalline. Faceted skin that shifted colors in the light, with 4 glowing eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. Behind it stood 2 other aliens, one with an exoskeleton reminiscent of an insect, and another that seemed almost gaseous, contained within what looked like an environmental suit. "I am High Arbiter Kaxalvorth of the Galactic Concordat," the crystalline being announced. "Your planet has been under observation for some time. Your recent advances in faster-than-light technology have brought you to our attention." Commander Elara Reeves of the United Earth Forces, she responded evenly. "We welcome peaceful contact." The alien's facets shifted to a deep blue. "Peace is always our objective, Commander. However, integration into the Concordat requires assessment. All species must prove their capability to contribute to galactic security." "Assessment?" Reeves asked. "Combat trials," Zalvorth stated matter-of-factly. "The universe is dangerous, Commander. Species that join our ranks must demonstrate their martial value. You will select your finest warriors. They will be tested." General Santos, who stood behind Reeves, stepped forward. "And if we refuse, then you remain isolated. No trade, no knowledge exchange, no protection." Zalvorth's tone suggested this was simply stating facts, not a threat. "The choice is yours, but understand that no newly contacted species has passed the trials on their first attempt. Most require decades of guidance before succeeding." After the transmission ended, Earth's leadership debated for 3 days. The decision, when it came, was unanimous. Humanity would face the trials. Commander Reeves was given command of the mission. In the briefing room of the Defender, she faced the 20 soldiers selected from Special Forces units worldwide. "The Concordat has made it clear they don't expect us to succeed," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "They see us as primitive, underdeveloped. We're going to prove them wrong." Major Jackson Torres, her second-in-command, leaned forward. At 6'4", with shoulders like a bull, he dominated any room he entered. "What exactly are these trials, Commander?" They wouldn't say. Only that they test martial prowess and tactical thinking. Reeves activated the holographic display, showing the alien vessel. "We have 60 days to prepare before we rendezvous with their testing facility." Captain Mei Chen, an infiltration specialist from the Pan-Asian Coalition, crossed her arms. 60 days to prepare for tests we know nothing about. That's hardly fair." "Which is precisely the point," Reeves replied. "They want us to fail. They want to keep us dependent on their guidance for as long as possible." "So what's the plan?" asked Lieutenant Kama Okafor, a Nigerian combat engineer with eyes that missed nothing. Reeves smiled thinly. "We prepare for everything." For the next 2 months, the team trained relentlessly. Without knowing the nature of the tests, Reeves designed a program that pushed them beyond conventional military training. They practiced in every environment Earth could offer: Arctic cold, desert heat, crushing oceanic depths, and oxygen-thin mountain peaks. They studied alien biology and technology from the limited information the Concordat had shared. They ran combat simulations against opponents with capabilities far beyond human norms. Opponents with 4 arms, with heightened senses, with strength that could bend steel. Most importantly, they developed strategies that played to human strengths. They're going to expect us to approach problems the way they would, Reeves explained during one late-night strategy session. But we evolved differently. We're persistence hunters. We're adaptable. And we've spent our entire history fighting each other, perfecting the art of war against ourselves. Torres grinned. So basically, we're going to outhuman the aliens. Exactly. 2 weeks before the deadline, one of their training simulations went catastrophically wrong. A gravity malfunction during a zero-G exercise sent Private First Class Daniels slamming into a bulkhead at dangerous speed. As the medical team rushed her to the infirmary, Reeves felt a cold weight in her stomach. They couldn't afford to lose anyone. Dr. Silva emerged from surgery 6 hours later. Exhaustion etched on her face. She'll live, but her leg is shattered in 17 places. She won't be combat ready in time. Reeves nodded, already calculating. We need a replacement. There's no time to integrate someone new into the team, Torres countered. Then we go with 19, Reeves decided. And we adapt. The day of departure arrived with the weight of history. As the transport shuttle carried them to the Concordat vessel, Reeves looked at each member of her team. They were humanity's best, not just in physical capability, but in intelligence, adaptability, and sheer determination. High Arbiter Xalvorth greeted them in the docking bay, flanked by representatives from a dozen alien species. Commander Reeves, your punctuality is appreciated. We're eager to begin, High Arbiter. The alien's facets shifted to what Reeves had come to recognize as amusement. Eager to fail, perhaps. Your species' overconfidence is noteworthy. They were escorted to quarters that had clearly been designed with human physiology in mind, a concession that impressed Reeves. The Concordat might expect them to fail, but they weren't being deliberately cruel. That night, as her team rested, Reeves studied the limited information they'd been given about the facility. The Crucible, they called it. A massive station orbiting a neutron star, designed specifically for the combat trials. The schematics revealed little, but Reeves had spent her life reading between the lines. They've been doing this for thousands of years, she murmured to Torres, who shared her vigilance. Testing new species, deciding their worth. Seems arrogant, Torres replied. It is. And that's our advantage. Reeves highlighted sections of the station. Look at the design. It's built to accommodate beings of various sizes and physiologies, but the fundamental assumptions are the same throughout. They expect certain approaches to problems, and we'll give them something different. Something human, Reeves agreed. The next morning, they were introduced to Sentinel Vexcal, a being with metallic skin and 6 limbs that moved with unsettling precision. I will oversee your performance in the trials, it said, voice resonating like struck crystal. You may study recordings of previous attempts if you wish, though I doubt they will help you. We would appreciate that, Reeves replied politely. The recordings confirmed her suspicions. The trials were ingeniously designed to test the limits of any species, but they all followed patterns based on how the Concordat races thought about combat, movement, and strategy. For 3 days, they studied every recording, noting each failure point, each assumption built into the tests. On the 4th day, they were summoned to the first trial. You understand your situation is unique, Vexcal told them as they stood before a massive door marked with alien symbols. No species has succeeded on their first attempt. The Concordat expects you to fail, but to learn from that failure. Reeves met the alien's gaze steadily. We understand completely. The door slid open, revealing a vast chamber beyond. Inside was what appeared to be a 3-dimensional maze of shifting platforms suspended over darkness. The air shimmered with energy fields and gravitational distortions. The labyrinth of discernment, Vexcal announced. You must reach the center and retrieve the marker, then return to this entrance. You have 3 hours. Reeves studied the constantly moving platforms, the unpredictable gravity wells, the disorienting visual effects. It was designed to confuse, to separate, to exhaust. She turned to her team, seeing the same recognition in their eyes. This was what they had trained for. "Remember," she said quietly, "we do this the human way." The trials. In the observation chamber, High Arbiter Xalvorth watched with dozens of other Concordat representatives as the humans entered the labyrinth. The crystalline being's facets shifted to a subtle pattern that indicated scientific curiosity. "Their physical parameters are unimpressive," noted a Vrel scientist, her insectoid mandibles clicking. "Below average strength compared to most sentient species, mediocre sensory capabilities, and fragile bodies, yet they display unusual confidence," responded another observer, "especially for a species making first contact." Xalvorth's crystalline body refracted light in a pattern indicating amusement. All new species are confident until they face the reality of their limitations. Let us see how they approach the labyrinth. Inside the trial chamber, Commander Reeves surveyed the shifting maze with practiced eyes. The platforms moved in patterns that seemed random but would certainly follow rules. Rules designed by alien minds that thought differently than humans. "Standard formation," she ordered. "Torres, Chen, Okafor, you're our anchors." The team immediately arranged themselves into a triangular pattern, with the three strongest members forming pivot points. They began moving as a coordinated unit, using short, controlled jumps between platforms, always maintaining visual contact with at least two teammates. In the observation room, the aliens watched with growing interest. "Unusual approach," remarked a gaseous being floating in a containment field. "Most species attempt to calculate the pattern or use their strongest members to forge ahead." "They're moving slowly," the Vrel scientist noted dismissively. "They won't reach the center in time at this pace." But the humans weren't just moving, they were learning. Each team member called out timing patterns, identifying the rhythms in the platform movements. Within 20 minutes, they had mapped enough of the system to increase their pace dramatically. Torres discovered that the gravity distortions followed a predictable wave pattern. Chen realized the visual distortions intensified in direct correlation to the stability of platforms. Okafor noticed that certain color patterns on the platforms indicated imminent directional changes. By the hour mark, they had reached the center, a suspended platform where a glowing orb hovered. "First objective complete," Reeves reported into her communicator. "Beginning extraction." The return journey should have been more difficult. The labyrinth was designed to reconfigure after the marker was taken, changing all the patterns the participants had learned. But the humans had anticipated this. Instead of trying to memorize specific routes, they had identified the underlying rules of the system. "They're adapting," Xalvorth observed, facets shifting to a deep purple of surprise. Not just reacting, but predicting. When the humans emerged from the labyrinth with 17 minutes to spare, the observation chamber fell silent. Vexkel's metallic features showed no emotion as it greeted them at the exit. Unexpected. The second trial will commence after a rest period of 6 hours. As they returned to their quarters, Reeves felt the weight of alien gazes following them. "They're reassessing," she told her team. "Expect the next trial to be adapted based on what they observed." "They still don't understand how we think," Torres replied with a grim smile. "That's still our advantage." The second trial was the Gauntlet of Perception, a massive chamber filled with sensory warfare designed to overwhelm and disorient. Blinding lights, sonic attacks that resonated at frequencies calculated to disrupt neural patterns, gravitational shifts, and temperature extremes that change without warning. Most species relied on technological countermeasures or their natural biological advantages. The humans had neither, but they had trained for sensory deprivation and overload scenarios extensively. The team moved in paired formation, each member responsible for monitoring their partner. When visual overload became too intense, they relied on touch-based communication systems they had developed. When sonic attacks threatened to incapacitate them, they used bone conduction signals through physical contact. Remarkable compensation techniques, a Concordat neurologist commented. They're deliberately sacrificing certain sensory inputs to preserve others. In the chamber, Private Rodriguez stumbled as a particularly vicious sonic attack targeted the human vestibular system. Captain Chen caught him before he fell, stabilizing him until he could recover. They protect their weakest links, observed a massive tentacled being. Most species would abandon compromised members. Inefficient, the Vrel scientist countered. It slows their progress. But it didn't slow them enough. The humans completed the gauntlet in record time, emerging with all team members functional, another unprecedented result. The third trial came after only 4 hours of rest, a deliberate reduction in recovery time. The Chamber of Endurance was a sprawling environment that cycled through extreme conditions. Arctic cold that froze exposed skin in seconds. Desert heat that caused dehydration within minutes. Crushing pressure zones. Oxygen-depleted areas. This trial has no time limit, VexCal informed them. You continue until you can no longer proceed. The previous record, set by a species renowned for their physical resilience, was 14 hours. The humans entered with grim determination, immediately implementing rotation strategies to conserve energy and share the burden of the most extreme conditions. They cycled through formation patterns, always keeping their most rested members at the points of highest stress. Hour after hour passed. The Concordat observers watched with growing astonishment as the humans pushed beyond expectations. Their physiology shouldn't allow this, the neurologist stated. They're operating beyond their biological limits. They're using psychological techniques to override physical limitations, Zalvorth realized, facets shifting rapidly through colors of amazement and concern. Their minds are pushing their bodies past normal thresholds. At hour 16, Lieutenant Okafor collapsed from heat exhaustion. Protocol dictated that team members who could no longer continue would be extracted, and the trial would continue with the remaining participants. But the humans refused to leave him. Captain Chen and Lieutenant Park dragged him to a cooler zone, implemented emergency cooling procedures, and brought him back to consciousness. Unprecedented, VexCal reported to Zalvorth. They're sacrificing efficiency for unit preservation. No, Zalvorth corrected, understanding dawning in its crystalline features. They're preserving their greatest resource, each other. The humans surpassed 20 hours, then 24. By the 30th hour, even the most skeptical Concordat observers were speechless. When they finally emerged, exhausted but triumphant, they had more than doubled the previous record. The final trial was the Combat Nexus, a holographic battle simulation against opponents designed specifically to exploit each species' weaknesses. The humans faced opponents that were stronger, faster, more numerous, and better armed. Their response shocked the observers. Instead of attempting to match their opponent's strengths, they changed the parameters of engagement entirely. They used environmental features for cover and concealment. They set traps. They employed feints and diversions. They're fighting asymmetrically, Zalvorth realized. They know they cannot win by direct confrontation, so they're changing the nature of the conflict. When the simulation ended, the humans stood victorious, bloodied, exhausted, but undefeated. In the final assessment chamber, Commander Reeves and her team stood before the Concordat Council. Zalvorth's crystalline form glowed with a light that seemed almost respectful. In thousands of years, the High Arbiter began. No species has completed all trials on their first attempt. Many of our own member races required decades of preparation before succeeding. Reeves met the alien's gaze steadily, too exhausted for pride but unwilling to show weakness. We misjudged humanity, Zalvorth continued. We assessed your physical capabilities, your technology, your resources, but we failed to account for your adaptability, your psychological resilience, and your unit cohesion. Those are our greatest strengths, Reeves replied simply. Indeed. The alien's facets shifted to a deep gold, a color Reeves had not seen before. The Concordat extends full membership to Earth, with all rights and privileges therein. Furthermore, we request that human instructors be assigned to our training academies to teach these human approaches. Torres coughed in surprise beside her. You want us to teach you? Reeves asked, making sure she understood correctly. The universe is dangerous, Commander Reeves, Exalvorth said, echoing its words from their first meeting. Any advantage must be cultivated. Humanity has demonstrated capabilities the Concordat had not considered. We would be foolish to ignore such potential. As they prepared to return to Earth with news of their success, Reeves found a moment of quiet reflection. The aliens had designed their trials based on their understanding of physical laws and biological capabilities, an understanding formed over thousands of years of interstellar civilization. But they had never encountered a species that evolved as humans had, on a death world of predators and extremes, forced to compensate for physical limitations with ingenuity and tenacity, shaped by millions of years of adapting to changing conditions and thousands of years of warfare against themselves. The Concordat had tested humans against the standards of the galaxy and found them not wanting, but exceptional. Not because humans were stronger or smarter or more advanced, but because they approached problems differently, because they refused to accept failure, and because they understood that their greatest strength lay not in the individual, but in what they could accomplish together.